The story starts with Hyun, who moves into a new apartment building named Green Home and feels like most of his days are boring to death. But things start becoming more interesting as he gets to meet some of his neighbors while a series of weird incidents begin happening. The building has a guard whose nose starts bleeding after smelling some molded fish a lady offered him, while another female neighbor pushes an empty stroller around, telling other people how beautiful her daughter is. Another tenant is extremely dedicated to religion, while one of the other neighbors is a gangster who is keeping someone hostage in his apartment. 1 week has passed since Hyun moved in, and he spends his time mostly playing video games until one day he notices something that seems like a group chat on his phone, where various senders comment that Hyun's parents and sister died, but he survived. Later that night, Hyun receives a food delivery and opens the door to pick up his package, but he sees the food scattered all around the hallway. He makes a couple of steps but freezes when he hears a monstrous growl and sees a creepy hand grabbing the food. He runs back inside his house, but soon a woman rings his bell and asks for help, saying that she returned back at her apartment moments ago and found her cat dead. Hyun says he will call the police, but his phone has no service, which makes him freeze out of terror. The woman acts even crazier as the time passes by, and suddenly darkness creeps in her eyes while her nose bleeds and she starts screaming like a ghost. When she moves out of Hyun's sight, he grabs a broomstick and rushes out to attack the woman. Instead, he meets the gangster, Sang, and feels relieved he sees a fellow human. In fact, so relieved that he passes out. The woman is completely transformed into something that looks like a zombie, and she now bangs on Yoon's door while screaming that she is hungry, almost breaking in. But for some reason, the woman runs away, and Yoon opens the door to have a talk with Sang, who happens to walk across her apartment. Meanwhile, some of the tenants have gathered on the bottom floor, but all of the entrances have been locked down. Two of them, Hyun and Seo, ask each other if their phones work. Hyun smashes a chain that the guard has used to lock the control room, and Seo tries to use the landline, which is not working as well. A man finds a bunch of switches and is able to release the main entrance, but a strange creature is waiting for them just outside. The creature walks in and kills one of them, but Hyun attacks it with a fire extinguisher, instructing the man to close the gate when he signals him. But suddenly, the fire extinguisher runs out of juice. Hyun's eyes almost pop out of his skull out of fear, but Seo is there for him and tackles the monster outside the building moments before the gates close, locking it outside for good. Hyun thanks Seo, who has been injured and a piece of glass has been stuck in her leg, but since she is a tough cookie, she takes it out on her own. When she gets up, Hyun proclaims that the creature they just faced is not the only one they have to worry about, and we see that a bunch of monstrous creatures in various shapes and sizes are lurking outside. The next morning, Hyun takes a look outside his window and realizes that the city is literally burning while a herd of black crows is flying above it, and his nose starts bleeding unexplainably. A quick flashback takes us back in time and briefly shows us what has happened with Hyun's family one day when they decided to go on a family trip, but Hyun didn't want to go with them. The day a truck hit his father's car and killed his parents and his sister. Hyun's sister Lee walks down the stairs and she accidentally sprains her ankle and falls on the floor. Sang walks past that exact point and minds his own business, but he has to stop when the zombie from earlier attacks him from behind. Sang hits the zombie, and as it seems he possesses some kind of supernatural strength since he is able to win the fight and kick the zombie to its death. Yoon walks down a flight of stairs herself and notices one of the tenants behaving strangely. In a matter of seconds, the tenant transforms into a monster after a fair amount of mumbling. Yoon hits him with a bat, but the monster gets up again, and this time, Jung runs to her aid and cuts the monster's head. However, when they leave, the creature gets up, and we see that Jung only cut the upper part of its head, and the creature is still able to walk without half of its brain or eyes. The monster wanders around and ends up outside Hyun's apartment right at the moment when Hyun opens the door to check if there is any food outside. Hyun trembles out of fear, but he realizes the monster cannot see him and stays still. The creature walks around the apartment for some time and eventually heads out. But that's not the end for Hyun since he hears a noise coming from outside and goes to his window to check it out. He sees the father of two children trying to zipline from their floor to the ground, but he is intercepted and killed by a giant eye. The eye goes after the children, but Hyun throws his TV on it and distracts it. The eye hovers outside his apartment and Hyun hits it with his broomstick, only to make it angrier and be trapped in its grip. Thankfully, Hyun's next-door neighbor, Han, cuts the eye with a self-made weapon and saves Hyun. Han writes some messages for Hyun and informs him that the monsters cannot be killed, furthermore asking him if Hyun wants to save the children. Hyun walks over to Han's apartment and Han makes an electrifying spear for him and tells him to keep his phone close because it makes a weird noise when monsters are approaching, a trick which he can use to avoid monsters. Hyun takes the gun and walks into the children's room, telling them that he is here to save them and they need to go to Han's apartment. But as they walk along the hallway, Hyun's nose starts bleeding and painful memories flood his mind. Darkness creeps into his eyes and he yells at the children to run away from him while he locks himself away from them. Meanwhile, Yoon and Jung have found the guy who was being held hostage by Sang and they free him. The man says that an intruder came into his house and tied him up. Along the way, the man acts quite strangely and eventually he tells the other two that he is going to return in his apartment because he doesn't want to slow them down. Later on, the man joins the other tenants on the bottom floor and he shares a suitcase full of food with them. However, one of the ladies doesn't want a share of it because her little dog doesn't stop barking at the man. A mind-bending sequence takes us back to the flashback where we saw Hyun's family dying. Only this time, Hyun is in the car with them, fighting with his family and wishing them to die. He wakes up in a hospital and the doctor tells him there must be a reason why he was the only one to survive. When he hits the streets, people start vanishing in thin air and his dark side appears, asking him to let it take control. Hyun gets knocked out of that situation and returns back to reality, when a door gets knocked down on him by a muscle monster. The children try to help Hyun and take him out of there, but he tells them to run. The kids run away and the monster delivers a punch which literally plants Hyun into the wall. Yoon and Jung hear the noise and they run near him, attacking the monster and saving Hyun. The children run away, but they have to stop on a flight of stairs when they see the headless monster lurking in front of them. Thankfully, Hyun has warned the kids about it and they remain silent and still. The headless monster walks away and the kids take a couple of steps, but the muscle monster appears behind them. The little faces shake in fear while the monster approaches them, but the headless monster has heard the noise and returns, starting a fight with the muscle monster. While they fight, the kids make a run and escape, but only for a short moment. The muscle monster catches up with them, but this time the lady with the stroller is the one who will save them. She asks the monster to let the kids alone, but the creature kicks her and finishes her with a series of punches. However, the lady crosses to the dark side and she becomes a monster herself, attacking the muscle monster. Eventually, the kids find an opening and they escape. Hyun takes the kids to Han while Yoon and Jung fight with the muscle monster. Jung distracts it away and tricks it into jumping out of the building while Yoon realizes that the lady has returned to her normal self. All of them gather in Han's room, and when the night falls, Yoon wakes up Hyun because it is his turn to stand guard. Hyun tells Yoon that he is probably infected, and if he ever crosses the dark side, she should kill him. Yoon agrees to do it if Hyun would agree to do the same for her. The next morning, Yoon and Jung tell Hyun and the rest that they can't live forever on Han's supplies, so they have decided to join the rest of the tenants on the bottom floor. Hyun says he is going with them, and if everything goes well, they are coming back for Han and the rest. The kids have really bonded with Hyun, and the boy asks him if he is going to return, which makes Hyun smile and reply that he is definitely coming back for them. Meanwhile, Seo has been trapped by a creature that resembles a spider. However, she cuts herself free from its web and tries to find an escape route through the air pipes. The creature crawls behind her and almost gets her, but in the last minute, Seo drops into another room where the gigantic creature is not able to squeeze in. When Seo meets with Hyun, who was the one to send her in the basement to check on the power grid, she blames him for intentionally sending her down there, even though he knew there was a monster lurking. Moments later, an emergency broadcast starts transmitting from the government and they announce that the country is under martial law, which means the military is in command. The broadcast also explains that the creatures are born because of a virus that plays on their desires. The creatures are very hard to kill and people are prompted to attack the infected moments before the transition, when they are the most vulnerable. Yoon, Jung, and Hyun join the rest of the tenants, but some of them don't welcome Hyun because they think he might suddenly transform into a monster. Some of them say they need to lock him somewhere on his own, but some of them don't agree. One of the tenants, Seok, who owns a supermarket in the building, says they need to vote for a leader so there is always someone that is in charge and makes good decisions. He wants to be the leader himself, but Ian says he doesn't agree and they will vote whether they want Seok to be the leader or not. The tenants vote, but the result is a draw. Hyun asks if he can vote in order to break the draw from Seok, who displays an overall aggressive behavior towards all of them. Doesn't quite agree. Seok gets angry at the tenants for not electing him their leader, but he suddenly starts bleeding and he eventually passes out. The tenants put him and Hyun in a separate room while Sang gets his hands on his rival again. He beats him around, but the man gathers up his courage and bursts at him, pushing him back. the man escapes and lies to the other tenants, telling them he is bleeding and having the symptoms described in the broadcast, so they should put him with the other two. However, he only does that to escape from Sang. On the other hand, as soon as he gets in the room with Hyun, the man asks him how he can transform into a monster. Sang is standing just outside the room and watching them, holding a set of keys in his hands. A short flashback shows us that he stole the keys from the man's pocket while they were fighting. Finally, we are taken in Han's room where the little girl tells him that Miss Im, the stroller lady, has been in the bathroom for way too long. Han gets his weapon and carefully approaches the bathroom. He opens the door slowly and witnesses that Miss Im has transformed into a complex creature and something that looks like a baby is growing inside her. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.